Genghis Khan, born in 1162, wasn't just an exceptional military leader. He was the ultimate conqueror. Under his leadership, the Mongol Empire became the largest continuous land empire in history. But beyond his strategic skills, his personal life was also remarkable. With 6 wives and around 500 concubines, he left a significant genetic legacy. Estimates suggest that about 16 million men today, or 0.5% of the global male population, carry his genetic traits. Behind this vast lineage were ruthless practices. Each military victory brought not only new territories but also a dark pattern of violence, looting, and forced submission. After every conquest, the destruction was thorough, wiping out almost all opposition and sending the surviving women directly to Genghis Khan. But after all, how did he treat them? For centuries, the lands of Central Asia witnessed the rise and fall of many empires. Amid these changes, a young man from a modest background made a unique mark on collective memory. His name was Temujin, born around 1162 among the nomads of the vast Mongolian steppes. From childhood, Temujin's life was filled with challenges. His father, a respected leader, was poisoned by rivals, and the tribe itself abandoned the boy, his mother, and his siblings to fend for themselves. In that environment, survival demanded ingenuity and courage, and understanding human behavior became an essential tool. From these experiences, a leader with sharp strategic vision emerged, someone who learned to seize opportunities and decipher others' motivations. Over time, Temujin would become Genghis Khan, the commander who would build an unprecedented empire and establish his name as one of history's most influential figures, capable of changing the course of entire peoples and nations. Over time, he gathered those who lived on the margins, forming a group willing to follow him not because of blood ties, but because of the conviction he inspired. His prestige grew as he proved his skills in horseback riding, archery, and understanding the unique combat tactics of the steppes. More than that, Temujin saw beyond the divisions that had kept the tribe separated for generations. A decisive step in this process was his marriage to Borta, the daughter of a leader from a neighboring tribe. The union not only sealed a commitment between families, but also solidified a valuable political alliance, expanding the network of support he had been building. However, the balance he achieved didn't last long. In a bold move, the Merkits invaded the camp and took Borta with them. Driven by rage and the need to reverse this blow, Temujin gathered his still modest group of allies and set out to find her. By overcoming the Merkits and rescuing his wife, he showed determination, courage, and the ability to protect those by his side. He realized that alliances based solely on family ties were causing insecurity and tension among the tribes. So he made a major shift in how his group was organized, creating units based on loyalty, competence, and the ability to act efficiently. Leaders now emerged from proven actions, not from bloodlines. Every warrior knew their efforts would be recognized, which built a strong sense of duty and collective commitment. These changes also transformed the battlefield. Temujin developed tactics that took advantage of speed and mobility, using mounted archers for quick, coordinated strikes. The enemy rarely had time to react because the strategy was to hit and run, using the vast steppes to their advantage. As a result, Temujin's power grew, but it also made other leaders uneasy. The threat he posed led rival tribes to unite under Jamuka, a former blood brother who now stood as a determined opponent challenging his rise. For years, the steppes were in constant chaos. Alliances kept shifting with the times. Bloody battles broke out one after another, and power moved quickly from one group to another. In this turmoil, Temujin knew how to seize every opportunity. With sharp tactics and calculated moves, he solidified his position, especially after defeating the Nayman tribe, expanding his territories and influence. But the Mongol expansion wasn't just about conquering land or controlling trade routes. As the empire grew, women from different backgrounds were taken from their homes, dragged off by the troops, and thrown into a new cycle of uncertainty. The Silk Road, once known for the exchange of goods and knowledge, became filled with stories marked by the sorrow of those who lost their freedom and voice. When a city fell, it wasn't just a change in who was in charge. It marked the end of entire ways of life, and women in particular felt the impact immediately and often irreversibly. Torn from their routines and support systems, they were sent off toward an uncertain future, now under someone else's control. What happened next didn't follow a single pattern. Some ended up as wives to high-ranking warriors. While this limited their independence, it could also provide some protection, ensuring a stable place in a new home. On the other hand, others were taken by men of lower status, which further reduced their chances of avoiding physical and emotional abuse. In this reality, sexual violence wasn't a distant threat, but a constant danger. There were also women who became slaves with no family ties. Sold, traded, and taken to unknown lands, they moved along trade routes that stretched across all of Asia. With each trade, they got a new owner but never regained control of their lives. When captive women became someone else's property, their identities were erased. Hard labor or the exploitation of their bodies became part of their new daily routine, and any attempt to resist usually led to immediate punishment. Those who were considered beautiful had a different fate. They were taken directly to Genghis Khan. At the same time, the role of free Mongol women was completely different from that of the captives. Within the empire's traditions, these women held influence and earned respect that would be unimaginable in many other societies. For example, being older was seen as an advantage, a sign of experience and good judgment. A husband who ignored his wife's advice was looked down upon, seen as someone unprepared for adult life. Additionally, Mongol women weren't limited to household chores or strict codes of behavior. They took part in outdoor activities, showed great skill in horseback riding, competed in horse races, and even participated in military actions. While some women suffered from the total loss of control over their own lives, others, born into a very different environment, acted freely and took on leadership roles within a unique social structure. Genghis Khan believed it was important to listen to women's advice, recognizing their ability to manage both household affairs and the administration of territories. The Mongol leaders' daughters-in-law received titles that reflected their status, while sons-in-law, often sent to military service, had less prominence and faced high risks on the battlefield. In this context, Mongol women had rights and responsibilities that were rare in other societies of the time. They could inherit property, lead their families when their husbands were away, and take on leadership roles. When it came to relationships, Mongol women weren't limited to just home life. They could voice their complaints publicly, like a warrior's wife who went to Ogoda Khan to report that her husband was neglecting her because of training. Among the Mongols, a child's paternal lineage mattered less than the mother's ability to guide them in life. In this setting, Kutulun really stood out. A descendant of Genghis Khan, she turned down any suitor who couldn't match her strength and even required a bed of 100 horses. By doing this, she built up a significant herd, showing that in the Mongolian steppes, women could set their own terms in areas that were previously controlled by others. After a successful conquest, Genghis Khan would ask about the most attractive women in the area. When someone described a particular woman, he would say he'd find her. His criteria included specific physical traits, and he set up a scoring system to evaluate each woman. If a woman didn't score high enough, he handed her over to his officers. After the looting and killing of the enemies, the Mongols would gather among the bodies, celebrating the victory intensely. It was in this setting that young women were presented to Genghis Khan and his army. In the Mongol leader's view, having the wives and daughters of enemy kings meant absorbing their strength and leaving them spiritually devastated. He used rape as a weapon of war, adding it to the violent methods of wiping out all opposing men. Additionally, he distributed women among rival clans, using them as tools for peace. The contradiction was clear. Although he banned adultery, Genghis Khan himself freely engaged in abuses. When the victory celebrations began, all the soldiers got some access to the captives, but the most beautiful women were always reserved first for the commander. Genghis Khan's army leaders believed he had an extraordinary sexual appetite. This reputation spread among the soldiers, fueled by the way the leader spent his nights with multiple women. He didn't just keep 4 main wives. He also took at least 1 woman from each conquered tribe. This practice was backed up by real examples. When he subdued the Tanguts, he married Chaka, the local chief's daughter, and when dealing with the Jin dynasty in China, he took a daughter of the emperor along with other gifts. Some women stayed with him. Others were given to commanders and subordinates, creating alliances and strengthening bonds between different groups. This way, he also arranged marriages for his sons, aiming to keep peace between rival clans. In one of these marriages, Genghis Khan married Yesugun Khatun, who was from the Tata people. Through this marriage, Yesugun saw a chance to find her missing sister Yesui, who had been taken by invaders and was still missing. She asked Genghis Khan to send soldiers to look for Yesui, offering to join the leader once she was found. When Yesui was located, she was also added to Genghis Khan's circle of wives, further strengthening the network of bonds created through these unions. The belief that the leader had special skills in the bedroom was good for his image, and was kept up by Khan himself, who surrounded himself with multiple partners each night. On one occasion, he spoke with a Taoist monk who claimed to be over 300 years old. Seeking advice on longevity, he was told to give up hunting, sex, and collecting taxes from Taoist monks. Genghis Khan agreed to follow just one of these suggestions, and although his actions changed many things in Asia, his decision to keep his sexual practices the same shows that the conqueror wasn't willing to give up all his habits. Genghis Khan set up special camps for some of his wives, known as ordos. Each camp housed not only prominent wives but also other women and their children, creating family and political units that extended his power. The Mongol Imperial Guard, the Keshig, kept a close watch on these areas because the leader moved his tent every night, always trying to stay unpredictable. When he went on a campaign, he only took one of his wives with him, while the others stayed back at the camps to handle internal matters and keep the empire running smoothly. The way Genghis Khan built his relationships was a mix of forced encounters and consensual unions. Still, he didn't just see women as symbols of power. He valued some of them deeply, especially Bort, with whom he had a strong bond from a young age. They were promised to each other as children and married when they were teenagers. However, their marriage faced a serious challenge when tribal rivalries turned violent. Borte was kidnapped by the Merkits and held captive for months. When he rescued her, Genghis Khan accepted the son she had during that time, Yohi, and raised him without questioning his biological father. This act showed that despite the martial environment and the common practice of taking hostages, the Mongol leader knew how to balance authority and loyalty, both on the battlefield and in family life. Genghis Khan valued Borte's input in his decisions. In Mongol society, it was believed that a wise wife could prevent rash choices, and over time, Borte became the great empress of the Mongol Empire. Their children were seen as the rightful heirs, which strengthened her central role. Even though having multiple wives was common for those with resources, Borte stood out among Genghis Khan's other 5 wives. He had a strong bond with his second wife, Kulan, who accompanied him on various campaigns. Additionally, after defeating a Tartar leader, Genghis married the leader's 2 daughters, further expanding his network of alliances. Each wife lived in her own tent, surrounded by their children and responsible for a specific region of the empire. Still, none of them reached the same level of influence as Borte, whose presence shaped not only the daily life of the Mongol leader, but also the direction of his entire empire. In 1226, Genghis Khan came back from Persia to put down the Tangut rebellion, who had regained power while he was away. It's said that the night before the crucial battle in 1227, he dreamed of red blood on white snow. His soothsayers took this as a bad omen involving the Tangut prince and the prince's daughter. The next day, the Mongols won the battle, executed the prince, and Genghis Khan took the young woman to his tent. When he tried to force her, she supposedly pulled out a hidden dagger and castrated him. Then she jumped into a river which, according to legend, was renamed Khartoum Gol, the Princess River. But this story is still pretty questionable. Genghis Khan's death has always been a mystery because no one ever found his tomb, so we can't really verify what happened. Some people think the story about the castration was made up by his enemies to ruin his reputation. To make things even murkier, after his funeral, 2,000 guests and 200 soldiers attended the ceremony. Then the soldiers killed all the guests. When they went back to the camp, other warriors killed the soldiers, making sure there were no witnesses to where the tomb actually was. Even with all these secrets, Genghis Khan's influence lasted for centuries, seen in the power his descendants held in Asian societies. His family line not only brought prestige but also access to many women, and as a result, a large number of children. His son Toshi is said to have had 40 kids, while his grandson Kublai Khan, who hosted the traveler Marco Polo, built a big family of legitimate descendants and kept his harem growing. Over the generations, this legacy reached Babur, the founder of the Mughal Empire in India, who followed his ancestors' example by having multiple wives and children. So even though we don't know exactly what happened to Genghis Khan in the end, his legacy lived on through his successors, spreading his influence far beyond his own lifetime.